Good evening again. Daniel Valdez again. So, I haven't put one of these campfire stories up in a while. And the reason why is because I've had events to cover and, previews and reviews and all that good stuff. So, I apologize for any quirky stories that you've been missing out on. But tonight, I had a little bit of inspiration, and like all artists, I don't consider myself one, but like all artists, when you are inspired, you go to your medium and you tell your story. So here it goes. I'm going to tell you about the time a girl threw up in the orchestra pit. Now, between between my I hope I remember this correctly. Between my sophomore and junior year of high school, they did a total renovation of our auditorium. Now, they didn't tear the auditorium down because the auditorium was connected to our main building, which that main building has been was standing at my high school since the day it opened. So they gutted the entire inside. They redid all the chairs. They redid the entire sound system, the lighting system, the stage. And like I said, I hope I remember this right. One of the things they added was an orchestra pit. It was like an 8-foot orchestra pit, which was awesome because then we got to really do some High School Musical stuff. Now, when I say High School Musical, I don't mean that stupid, crappy High School Musical movie. I'm talking about real theater. I'm talking Phantom of the Opera. I'm talking Les Miserables. I'm talking West Side Story. I'm talking about all that stuff. So, junior year, we did West Side Story, and it was awesome. It was so cool because you're playing music by Bernstein and you're just playing jazzy stuff. And I was an oboe player. We never got to play jazzy stuff. So when I'm seeing like syncopated rhythms, I'm losing my mind. I'm going crazy with that stuff. My senior year, we did Oklahoma. Now, I don't remember much about anything about that musical. I remember Sorry with the Fringe on top, but that's about it. The rest was kind of a blur, and I'm not exactly sure why. So the way we did rehearsals was that basically the drama department gave us the music, and they said, okay, learn the music, do your thing, get what you need to get right, and then we'll do a couple of rehearsals to kind of get everything in line. The first rehearsal was like 5 hours long. We would be there at we would get out of school at 4 p.m. on the nose. And this was done during the spring, so marching band was already over. So we would have like an hour to go eat and do whatever we wanted to do, and then we had to be in the pit by 5 o'clock. That first rehearsal would last like 5 hours, so we'd be there until 10 p.m. on a school night. And you would just basically go over musical cues. Okay, when this actor says this, then you play this song. When the lighting does this, then you play this song. We just basically hash it out in one rehearsal. Then the second and third rehearsal, we basically do a complete run through of the entire musical. Nobody stops. Nothing happens. It's literally the show must go on. It doesn't matter what happens. So my senior year, we do Oklahoma. And I believe it was the second rehearsal that we did. It was in the middle of the week. It's like 2 weeks before opening curtain. So we get in the orchestra pit. We have our string players. It's about, I don't know, like 15 orchestra players, string players. And then we had about 15 to 20 band players. And of course, I, being the oboe player, was sitting right in the middle, directly in front of the director, first row. Now, granted, it's not a very big pit. It was 8 foot tall, but it wasn't very big in terms of width. So, we had to deal with spacing problems. Everybody was crammed in there. And of course, in an orchestra pit, you have lamps that are on your music stands. And if you've never experienced a fourth degree burn from one of those orchestra pit lamps, it is not fun. but nevertheless, it was such a cool experience. So we're rehearsing one night, and I'm sitting there. I'm directly in front of the orchestra director, right in front of her. We get about, 15 minutes into the show. Now, the principal, I want to say violin player or viola. I get those two confused sometimes, and I'm really sorry if I get the instruments incorrect. The principal violin player is sitting all the way to my right. Now, I knew her. I had a couple of classes with her, and I'll be honest, I was a senior. She was a junior at the time. I kind of had a crush on her, even though she had a boyfriend. Whatever. I was young. Get over it. So I knew her a little bit, but we didn't hang out in the same circles. In fact, junior year, when she was a sophomore, she asked me for one of my oboe reeds because she thought it was like a really cool instrument, and she had never used one of those things. So the final night we did West Side Story my junior year, I gave her one of my oboe reeds, and it's one of those things where when you're young and you do something nice for a girl or for a guy, and then you completely overanalyze the situation. You were like, oh, well, she smiled at me this one time, while we were passing in the hall, that means we're going to be together, or something like that. It was one of those stupid things. And she was so happy, and, we would talk every now and then when we pass each other in the halls, whatever. So, we're going through rehearsal. We're just sitting there. And I look over at her, and we glance eyes at each other, and she doesn't look good at all. She looks terrible. Like she's sick. Like she's really sick. And of course the actors are doing their thing, so I'm trying not to talk very loudly, and I kind of whisper to her, and she's about 6 or 7 chairs to my right, at the very end of the first row, and I go, hey, are you okay? And she doesn't say anything. She just kind of shakes her head like, nope, I am not okay. I'm going to be really sick really soon. Then, about 2 minutes later, I look over at her, and she starts heaving. And I'm like, oh no, this is not going to happen. This is not happening right now. Because it's a confined space. And vomit is very, very gross. So 2 minutes later, she starts heaving, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, no, this can't be happening. Sure enough, she turns to her right and pukes over the wall. She pukes on the wall of the orchestra pit. And, of course, everyone freaks out. They're all just like, oh, gross. Like, I can't imagine how embarrassing it was for her. So... So the orchestra director freaks out. She's crying because she's one, embarrassed, and two, sick. So the orchestra director gives her a big hug and takes her out of the orchestra pit during the rehearsal. Now keep in mind, this is one of those rehearsals where the show goes on no matter what. You do not have the option of screaming from the orchestra pit to the drama director, hey, our principal violinist puked on the orchestra pit. Can we stop, please? That is not an option. So we're sitting there for 5 minutes, and there's no orchestra director. There's no principal violinist. So we're all kind of murmuring to each other, hey, who's going to take the lead? Who's going to do this? And of course, who do the band people egg on to take the reins? It was me, because I was the drum major my senior year in the fall marching band. Now keep in mind, this was we did the high school musical during the spring. So they're egging me on. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how to do that. I mean, I can conduct, but this is a completely different beast. I don't want to screw this up. The drama director has no idea what happened in the orchestra pit. The nuclear waste that was released inside the orchestra pit. He has no idea what's going on. So the orchestra people are kind of looking at me, and they kind of knew who I was, but we didn't hang out. I never saw them in any classes at all. So they're kind of looking at me like, who is this guy? What is he going to do? And I was like, okay, well, I guess I can do this. I mean, if it's written down on the score, no big deal. We can do this. So I was like, okay. So I got up on the podium. I grabbed the baton, and I'm frantically looking through the score. And I'm like flipping pages and everything. Because remember, it's been like 5 or 7 minutes since we played anything. So I'm just looking through everything. I was like, okay, gotta look for words. And of course, our orchestra director penciled in like, hey, this is when the actor says this word, start the music. And then when the actor says, or when they start this motion, or they start doing this, or the lighting is this, then you stop the music. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I'm grabbing the thing, and I'm more nervous than I was than Grand National semifinals, when my entire season was on the line. I was more nervous at that point than I was when I was doing something that I had worked my entire high school career to accomplish. And here I am standing in an orchestra pit. Now keep in mind, the vomit is like directly behind me. It smells in the orchestra pit. I'm sorry if this sounds gross, but I'm trying to set the scene here. So I grab the thing. I'm trying to focus. I'm like, okay. Wait for the thing. And then they say the words, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And I count them off, and we start playing. And then... and then we play a couple of bars. And then they change the scene, and then the actor comes on, they start speaking again, and I just randomly cut them off. Like we're at a high school football game. I had no idea what I was doing. So that thing happened. I put the baton down, and thankfully the orchestra director, about a minute later, after I cut everybody off, came down the steps into the orchestra pit. And she gave me a pat on the back. She said, good job. And of course, she had a bunch of napkins because she had to clean up everything. And I just sat in the chair, and I was slumped in my chair. I was like, I've never been more nervous during a performance in my musical career than I was at that point. And of course, all the band kids are losing their mind. They're like, yeah, go Daniel. And all the orchestra kids are like, hey, that was a good job. And I'm sitting there just like dead because I had no idea what I was doing. And we made it through, and it was such an awkward situation. And it's one of those things where, like, you know, when you're young and you have a crush on somebody, and you see them do something weird or out of character or something normal, like, okay, everybody pukes, okay? That happens sometimes. Everybody knows that. But actually seeing that kind of just, it changes your perspective on that person. I don't know, it was just weird. It was such a weird day, and it was one of the coolest experiences of my music career, was being in that orchestra pit. I don't know if it was the camaraderie you get from being in such a confined space with such great musicians. I don't know if it was that, or the fact that you were in such a new environment. You know, you weren't on a football field, and you technically weren't in a concert hall. You were like I said, you were in a confined space with a bunch of musicians, and it's like your own little family. It's your own little room. Nobody else is allowed in there except you. I don't know. It was just a weird experience. Anyways, I'm done here. This is just a random inspired story that came up. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you didn't, I'm really sorry. I promise the next recording I'll put out, it's going to be about the Conroe Regional. We're going to talk band again and all that good stuff. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for all the support. I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you all very much. I'm done here. Take care. Adios. Bye-bye.